The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian, its ceiling lost in artificial stars that mimicked the night sky of a dozen homeworlds. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated areas, each section modified to accommodate their unique physiologies. The air recycled constantly, maintaining the precise atmospheric mixture that kept everyone breathing comfortably. Admiral Zeftar of the Vorthak Empire rose from his crystalline throne, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of dominance. His exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber's lights, and his compound eyes reflected the faces of those who would soon bow before his might. The Vorthak had conquered 17 systems in the past century, their biomechanical warships leaving nothing but silent worlds in their wake. Esteemed council members, his voice resonated through universal translators, carrying the metallic undertone that made lesser species tremble. We have gathered today to address the human problem. A ripple of nervous energy passed through the assembly. The humans had been the subject of heated debate for months now. They were newcomers to galactic society, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. Most species took centuries to develop such technology. Yet humans had managed it in a remarkably short time after their first ventures into space. Counselor Velmaran of the peaceful Etherian collective shifted uncomfortably in her floating meditation pod. Her translucent form pulsed with worried colors. "Admiral, surely we can resolve this through diplomatic channels. The humans have shown willingness to negotiate in previous encounters." Zeftar's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. Negotiate? These mammals have claimed 37 systems in less than 2 decades. They expand faster than any species we've encountered, establishing colonies and trade routes with unprecedented speed. They refuse to acknowledge our established territories and ignore our warnings. The Caltharian representative, a being resembling a massive jellyfish floating in a tank of methane, pulsed agreement. The humans have disrupted trade routes that have existed for millennia. Their merchant vessels travel through space we have claimed for our own use. When we attempt to collect passage fees, they simply ignore our signals and continue on their way. They are primitives, added the Nexari delegate, her 6 legs clicking against the metal floor. Their technology is crude, their ships barely capable of sustained flight. Yet they act as if they own the galaxy. Zeftar waited for the murmurs to die down before continuing. The Vorthak Empire has studied these humans extensively. They are a young species, barely evolved from their planet's surface. They lack the wisdom that comes with age, the understanding of proper galactic hierarchy. They need to be taught their place. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what Zeftar was suggesting. The Vorthak Empire had never lost a war. Their military might was legendary, their tactics brutal but effective. When they conquered a world, they left it functional but forever changed, its population serving the Empire's needs. Counselor Velmaran's form flickered with distress. Surely there must be another way. The humans may be young, but they have shown remarkable adaptability. Perhaps if we offered them a place in the established order, they would accept reasonable boundaries. They have already rejected our generous offers, Zeftar replied coldly. 3 months ago, we sent ambassadors to their primary world, Earth. We offered them 12 systems to call their own under our protection, in exchange for recognition of our sovereignty over the sectors they currently occupy illegally. And their response? Asked the Draconian ambassador, his scaled head tilting with curiosity. They laughed. The words carried such venom that several council members physically recoiled. Their representative, a female called Sarah Chen, actually laughed at our proposal. She told our ambassadors that humanity would continue expanding as they saw fit, and that no alien empire would dictate their movements through space. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. To laugh at the Vorthak Empire was unthinkable. Species that showed such disrespect typically found their homeworlds turned into asteroid fields within the month. Furthermore, Zeftar continued, his voice rising above the chatter, they have begun forming alliances with some of our vassal species. The mining colonies in the Kepler sector have started selling their extracted materials to human traders, instead of fulfilling their obligations to us. The humans offer better prices and shorter shipping routes. This revelation sent waves of concern through the assembled representatives. If vassal species began defecting to trade with humans, it could destabilize the entire galactic economy. The established order had maintained peace for over 1,000 years, built on clear hierarchies and understood territorial boundaries. The Aquarian delegate spoke from his water-filled sphere, his words bubbling through the translation device. "What exactly are you proposing, Admiral?" Zeftar's expression darkened, if such a thing were possible for a creature with an exoskeleton face. The Vorthak Empire formally requests Council approval for military action against the human territories. We will demonstrate the consequences of defying established galactic order. Once the humans understand their proper place, peace will return to our sectors. Military action? Velmiran's voice carried notes of horror. Against an entire species? The humans have shown no aggressive intent toward Council members. They simply pursue their own expansion, as is their right as a spacefaring civilization. They forfeit that right when they ignore our territorial claims, the Nexari delegate interjected. The Vorthak Empire's boundaries are well established. Human expansion threatens the stability we have all worked to maintain. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome seemed inevitable. The Vorthak Empire commanded too much respect and fear for their proposal to be rejected outright. Smaller species worried about their own territories, concerned that human expansion might eventually reach their worlds. Others feared Vorthak retaliation if they opposed the Empire's will. As the vote was called, only the Etherian Collective and 2 minor species voted against military action. The resolution passed with overwhelming support, authorizing the Vorthak Empire to take necessary measures to contain human expansion and restore order to the disputed sectors. Zeftar's satisfaction was evident in the way his exoskeleton gleamed. "The Empire thanks the Council for their wisdom. We will begin operations immediately. The humans will learn that the galaxy has rules, and those rules will be enforced." As representatives filed out of the chamber, few noticed the worried expression on Velmiran's translucent features. She had studied the human files more thoroughly than most, and something about their rapid technological advancement troubled her. Species didn't typically evolve so quickly unless they possessed some fundamental advantage others lacked. The Vorthak Empire began mobilizing their war fleets that same day, confident in their overwhelming superiority. After all, what could a species barely 50 years into space travel possibly do against an empire that had conquered worlds for over a millennium? The humans would surrender after the first demonstration of Vorthak power, begging for the mercy that might or might not be granted. None of them suspected that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. The war began 3 weeks later, with what the Vorthak Empire considered a standard demonstration of power. Admiral Zeftar personally commanded the assault fleet, 12 massive biomechanical dreadnoughts supported by 47 smaller vessels. Their destination was Kepler 442b, a human agricultural colony with a population of roughly 2 million. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Destroy the orbital defense platforms, land occupation forces, and broadcast the colony's surrender across human space. The message would be clear: submit to Vorthak authority or watch your worlds burn. It had worked flawlessly against dozens of other species. Zeftar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the relentless Maw, watching the blue-green world grow larger on the view screen. Intelligence reports indicated minimal defenses, just 3 small orbital stations and a handful of patrol craft. The humans had clearly never faced a real military threat. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking nervously, "we're detecting an unusual number of ships in the system. Our scouts counted 12 human vessels, but sensors now show 47. Reinforcements." Zeftar dismissed the concern with a wave of his upper arms. "It makes no difference. Begin the attack." The Vorthak fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their ship's organic hulls gleaming like dark metal, biomechanical weapons powered up, ready to demonstrate the futility of resistance. The 3 human orbital stations immediately began broadcasting surrender requests, but Zeftar ignored them. Examples had to be made. Then something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't retreat. Instead, they accelerated directly toward the Vorthak fleet, moving faster than anything in the Empire's databases suggested was possible. Worse, more ships kept appearing, materializing from what seemed like empty space. "Admiral," the sensor operator's voice carried an edge of panic. The additional ships were hidden behind the asteroid belt. "They're using some kind of stealth technology we've never encountered. Ship count is now 83 and climbing." Zeftar's compound eyes focused on the tactical display. The human vessels were smaller than his dreadnoughts, but they moved with precision that spoke of advanced coordination systems. More troubling, they were approaching at speeds that should have torn them apart under normal physics. "All vessels, open fire," he commanded. "Destroy these insects before they can reach effective range." Biomechanical cannons erupted across the Vorthak fleet, sending streams of corrosive energy toward the approaching humans. The weapons had never failed to penetrate enemy defenses, dissolving hull materials at the molecular level. They were particularly effective against the crystalline armor favored by most galactic species. The human ships didn't even slow down. Energy beams that should have melted their hulls struck some kind of shimmering barrier and dispersed harmlessly. The ships continued their impossible acceleration, closing the distance faster than Vorthak targeting systems could track. "Impossible," Zeftar breathed. "No species has developed shields capable of deflecting our bioweapons." His tactical officer's voice cracked as he delivered the next report. "Admiral, the human vessels are launching projectiles. Primitive kinetic weapons, but they're moving at... This can't be correct. These readings suggest near light speed velocities." The first human salvo struck the Vorthak fleet like the hammer of an angry god. Solid metal projectiles accelerated to impossible speeds by technologies the Empire had never imagined, punched through biomechanical armor as if it were tissue paper. The dreadnought-crushing victory simply ceased to exist, torn apart by tungsten rods moving at 20% of light speed. Alarms screamed across the Vorthak fleet as more ships died. The humans had somehow weaponized relativistic physics, turning basic matter into weapons of unimaginable destruction. Worse, their ships were now close enough to reveal additional surprises. "Admiral, the human vessels are deploying smaller craft. Thousands of them. They appear to be... Are those missiles guided by artificial intelligence?" Zeftar watched in growing horror as swarms of tiny craft erupted from the human ships. Each missile was no larger than a Vorthak fighter, but they moved with coordinated precision that suggested individual intelligence. They adapted their flight patterns in real time, learning from each defensive measure the Empire deployed. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, 58 Vorthak ships had been destroyed, including 6 dreadnoughts. The remaining vessels, damaged and demoralized, fled the system in disarray. Not a single human ship had been lost. As the relentless maw limped toward the jump point, its hull scored by weapons fire, Zeftar received a transmission from the human colony. A middle-aged woman appeared on his screen, wearing simple civilian clothes and sitting behind what looked like an ordinary desk. "This is Governor Martinez of the Kepler 442 Colonial Administration," she said calmly. "I wanted to thank you for providing our local defense force with such an excellent training exercise. It's been months since they've had the opportunity to test their new equipment against live targets." Zeftar's mandibles clicked involuntarily. "Training exercise?" His elite fleet had been used for target practice? "Your ships performed exactly as our simulations predicted," Governor Martinez continued conversationally. "Though I must say your biomechanical technology is fascinating. Our scientists would love to examine some of the wreckage you've left behind. We're always interested in studying new approaches to starship design." The transmission ended, leaving Zeftar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to keep their damaged ship functional. The proud Vorthak Empire had just suffered its first military defeat in over 3 centuries, and they had been dismissed as a training exercise. News of the disaster reached the Galactic Council within hours. Emergency sessions were called as representatives struggled to understand what had happened. The Vorthak Empire's military supremacy had been the foundation of galactic order for generations. If humans could defeat the Empire's finest ships so easily, what did that mean for everyone else? Counselor Velmarin received the battle reports with growing alarm. The humans hadn't just won. They had demonstrated technologies that shouldn't have been possible: relativistic weapons, AI-guided munitions, stealth systems that could hide entire fleets. How had a species so young developed such advanced capabilities? More disturbing were the strategic implications. The humans had known the Vorthak fleet was coming. They had been prepared with forces in position and weapons ready. This hadn't been a desperate last-minute defense. It had been a carefully planned demonstration of capability. Across human space, colonial governors received identical messages from Earth's Stellar Defense Command. The war they had all been preparing for had finally begun, but not in the way anyone expected. The galactic powers had finally chosen to test humanity's resolve, and the test results were now available for all to see. In her private chambers, Velmiran accessed classified files she had compiled during her study of human history. What she found there terrified her more than any Vorthak weapon ever could. Humans were unique among galactic species in one crucial respect. They were the only race that had evolved in an environment of constant warfare. Every other spacefaring civilization had developed on worlds where their species had achieved dominance early in their evolution. They had grown comfortable. Their military technologies focused on maintaining order rather than winning wars against equals. Humans were different. They had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting each other, developing increasingly sophisticated ways to kill. Now that same species had turned their attention to the stars, and they had brought their talent for warfare with them. The Galactic Council had just challenged the most naturally aggressive species in known space to prove their military capability. As Velmiran began composing urgent warnings to send across the galaxy, she couldn't help but wonder if it was already too late. The humans had been preparing for this war long before anyone realized it had begun. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the holographic display in Earth's Strategic Command Center, watching real-time updates from 47 human colonies across the galaxy. The Vorthak attack on Kepler 442 had been expected, even welcomed. It provided the perfect opportunity to field test new weapon systems while sending a clear message to the galactic community. "Status report," she requested, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. Commander Rodriguez highlighted sectors on the galactic map. All colonial defense forces report green status. The Vorthak probe was repelled with minimal ammunition expenditure. Our stealth platforms remain undetected in 17 key systems. Intelligence suggests the Empire is regrouping for a larger assault. Chen nodded, unsurprised. The Vorthak Empire had built its reputation on overwhelming force. A single defeat would only make them angry, not cautious. They would return with everything they had, expecting to crush humanity through sheer numbers. They would be disappointed. "What's the response from other council species?" Chen asked. "Mixed," reported Intelligence Director Wang. "The Etherian Collective is attempting to organize peace negotiations. Several minor species are quietly reaching out through back channels, expressing interest in trade partnerships. The Nixari and Caltharian governments are maintaining public support for the Vorthak position, while privately preparing their own defensive measures." Chen smiled grimly. Fear was a wonderful motivator. The other species were beginning to realize that if humans could defeat the Empire's best ships so easily, their own fleets might be equally vulnerable. And the Vorthak themselves? "Admiral Zeftar has been recalled to the Empire's capital. Our sources suggest he's facing significant political pressure over the defeat. Emperor Vaktoth is reportedly mobilizing the 4th Battle Fleet for immediate deployment." The 4th Battle Fleet. Chen had been hoping for this development. Intelligence indicated the fleet consisted of over 300 vessels, including 12 of the Empire's newest dreadnoughts. It represented roughly 1/4 of the Vorthak Empire's total military strength. "Excellent. Signal all colonial governors that we're proceeding to Phase 2. Begin deploying our special packages to the target systems." Across human space, seemingly ordinary cargo vessels began subtle course corrections. These ships had been traveling established trade routes for months, carrying legitimate goods while maintaining perfect cover identities. No one paid attention to human merchants anymore. They were simply part of the galactic economy's background noise. What the other species didn't know was that each cargo vessel carried a very special secondary payload. Hidden within their hulls were devices that would revolutionize space warfare, assuming anyone survived long enough to study them. Meanwhile, on the Vorthak homeworld of Tethvar, Emperor Vaktoth raged in his crystalline palace. The defeat at Kepler 442 had been broadcast across the galaxy, turning the Empire into a laughingstock. Vassal species were openly questioning Vorthak authority. Trade agreements were being renegotiated. The carefully maintained order of galactic civilization was crumbling. "Explain to me," the Emperor hissed at his assembled admirals, "how a primitive species with 50 years of space travel destroyed one of our elite fleets." Admiral Zeftar, still bearing the scars of his defeat, struggled to find words. Your Imperial Majesty, the humans possess technologies we have never encountered. Their weapons operate on principles our scientists cannot explain. Their ships move faster than our physics suggest is possible. Impossible! Emperor Vaktoth's exoskeleton darkened with rage. No species develops such capabilities without centuries of research. Someone must be supplying them with advanced technology. This theory had been gaining traction in Empire intelligence circles. Perhaps the Etherian Collective, with their advanced energy manipulation abilities, had secretly armed the humans, or maybe the reclusive architects who rarely interacted with other species had chosen humanity as their proxies. It doesn't matter who's helping them, the Emperor declared. The Fourth Battle Fleet will crush their resistance and expose their alien benefactors. Admiral Krexmol will command the operation. Admiral Krexmol was the Empire's finest military mind, a strategist who had never lost a battle. His biomechanical enhancements included direct neural interfaces with his ship's computers, allowing him to process tactical information faster than any purely organic being. If anyone could defeat the humans, it was him. The Fourth Battle Fleet assembled in the Tethvar system over the next 2 weeks, a sight that had terrified dozens of species into submission. 300 vessels arranged in perfect formation, their biomechanical hulls gleaming like instruments of divine judgment. Every ship carried the Empire's most advanced weapons, from molecular disruptors to quantum torpedoes. As the fleet prepared to depart, Emperor Vaktoth delivered a personal message to Admiral Krexmol. "Bring me the human homeworld. I want Earth's population to witness the consequences of defying the Empire. Their screams will echo across the galaxy for 1,000 years." The fleet departed Tethvar in a display of power that registered on sensors across multiple star systems. Their destination, Sol, the human homeworld. If humanity wanted to play at galactic politics, they would learn the rules the hard way. What Admiral Krexmol didn't know was that his fleet had been tracked from the moment it left Vorthak space. Human stealth platforms, invisible to Empire sensors, shadowed the formation while transmitting detailed tactical information back to Earth. By the time the Vorthak fleet reached the outer edge of the Sol system, Stellar Defense Command had analyzed every ship's capabilities and identified optimal targeting solutions. More importantly, the cargo vessels that had been traveling galactic trade routes for months had reached their destinations. In systems throughout Vorthak space, seemingly innocent merchant ships suddenly revealed their true purpose. What had appeared to be simple cargo containers were actually sophisticated weapons platforms, each carrying enough firepower to sterilize a planet. As Admiral Krexmol's fleet approached Earth's orbital defenses, they received a transmission from Admiral Chen herself. She appeared on screen wearing a simple military uniform, her expression calm and professional. "Admiral Krexmol, welcome to the Sol system. I'm Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding officer of Earth's Stellar Defense Force. I wanted to personally thank you for bringing such an impressive fleet to our little corner of the galaxy." Krexmol's mandibles clicked in confusion. The human admiral seemed genuinely pleased to see his armada, as if he were an invited guest rather than a conquering enemy. "You have some remarkable ships," Chen continued conversationally. "Our technicians are particularly interested in your biomechanical hull designs. We've never had the opportunity to study Vorthak engineering up close before." "Surrender now," Krexmol transmitted back, "and your species will be granted the mercy of servitude. Continue this resistance and Earth will become another dead world orbiting a lonely star." Chen's smile never wavered. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Admiral. You see, we've already invested considerable resources in this conflict. It would be wasteful not to see it through to completion." As she spoke, Krexmol's sensors began detecting energy signatures throughout the Sol system. What had appeared to be empty space was suddenly full of human vessels, materializing from stealth as if conjured by magic. Worse, similar energy signatures were appearing in Vorthak systems across the galaxy. Chen leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming almost predatory. "Admiral, allow me to demonstrate why challenging humanity to war was the worst decision your empire has ever made." The Battle of Sol began at precisely 1432 Earth Standard Time, and it redefined every assumption about space warfare held by the galactic community. Admiral Krexmol's 300 ships found themselves facing what appeared to be an equal number of human vessels. But numbers told only part of the story. The first revelation came when Krexmol ordered his fleet to open fire. Biomechanical weapons that had conquered worlds for centuries struck human shields and simply vanished, their energy absorbed and redirected by systems that operated on principles the Empire had never imagined. The humans had somehow learned to manipulate the fundamental forces that held matter together. Impossible readings, Admiral, his sensor operator reported, neural interfaces sparking with overload. The human vessels are drawing energy directly from subspace. They're using our own weapons fire to power their systems. Krexmol's enhanced mind processed the implications immediately. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were feeding off Vorthak aggression like parasites, growing stronger with every attack. It was a level of technological sophistication that should have required millions of years to develop. Then the human counterattack began, and the Empire learned what true warfare looked like. Human ships didn't fire traditional weapons. Instead, they deployed devices that seemed to bend reality itself. Gravity wells appeared around Vorthak vessels, crushing them into singularities before dispersing harmlessly. Space-time distortions opened micro-wormholes that teleported sections of Empire ships into the heart of nearby stars. Most disturbing of all were the temporal weapons that aged enemy vessels centuries and seconds, turning proud dreadnoughts into cosmic dust. Within minutes, half the Fourth Battle Fleet had been destroyed, and the survivors found themselves completely outmaneuvered. Human ships moved through space as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions, appearing and disappearing at will while striking from impossible angles. But the true scope of human planning became clear when reports began flooding in from across Vorthak space. The cargo vessels that had been traveling trade routes for months suddenly revealed their purpose. Each ship contained what humans called a stellar engineering package, technology capable of turning a star into a weapon. On Tethavar, Emperor Vaktoth watched in horror as their own sun began to change. Solar flares erupted in geometric patterns, directed by human technology toward specific targets. The Empire's orbital shipyards, built over millennia, were vaporized by concentrated stellar energy. Worse, the star's output was being focused and transmitted to other systems, turning the Vorthak Empire's own sun into a galaxy-spanning weapon. How is this possible? The Emperor demanded of his terrified scientists. No species possesses such technology. The answer came from an unexpected source. Deep within the Empire's intelligence archives, automated systems had been analyzing human broadcasts for months, searching for military secrets. What they found instead was something far more disturbing: entertainment. Humans created fictional stories about warfare for fun. Their entertainment media was filled with detailed scenarios of galactic conquest, technological superiority, and strategic brilliance. What other species considered unthinkable military scenarios, humans explored as casual entertainment during their leisure time. More troubling still, these stories weren't random fantasies. They were based on rigorous scientific research and strategic analysis. Human civilians routinely discussed military technologies and tactics that surpassed anything in the Empire's arsenals. Children played games that taught them to think like military strategists before they could read. The humans hadn't developed their capabilities in secret. They had been openly discussing them for decades, publishing their research, sharing their discoveries. The galactic community had simply been too arrogant to pay attention to what they considered primitive entertainment. Back in the Sol system, Admiral Krexmol found himself trapped in a nightmare of human making. His fleet was being systematically dismantled by technologies that seemed to mock the very concept of military resistance. Worse, the humans were clearly holding back, using only a fraction of their capabilities. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving another transmission from the human commander." Admiral Chen appeared on screen again, her expression unchanged. Behind her, tactical displays showed the real-time destruction of Vorthak forces throughout the galaxy. "Admiral Krexmol, I wanted to offer you the opportunity to surrender while you still have ships left to surrender with." "We will never submit to primitives," Krexmol snarled, though his voice carried less conviction than before. "Primitives?" Chen raised an eyebrow. "Admiral, we've been monitoring your communications. You still don't understand what's happening here, do you?" The display behind her changed, showing a tactical analysis of the Empire's military capabilities. Every ship design, every weapon system, every strategic doctrine was laid out in perfect detail. The humans knew everything about Vorthak military technology. You see, Chen continued, we've been studying you for decades. Every vassal species you've conquered has been quietly sharing information with us. Every trade agreement you've negotiated has included human observers. We know your empire better than you do. This revelation struck Krexmol like a physical blow. The humans had been infiltrating the galactic community from the moment they achieved space travel, gathering intelligence while everyone dismissed them as harmless newcomers. Every diplomatic contact, every trade negotiation, every cultural exchange had been a data-gathering operation. But that's not the truly impressive part, Chen added, her smile becoming genuinely warm. The impressive part is that we developed all these weapons and strategies without ever intending to use them against you. Krexmol's enhanced mind struggled to process this statement. What do you mean? Admiral, everything you've seen today, the weapons, the tactics, the technology, we developed it all for fighting each other. Humans have been preparing for galactic warfare since before we knew there was a galaxy to fight in. We just assumed that when we met alien civilizations, they would be as dangerous as we are. The implications of this statement were staggering. The humans had developed galaxy-conquering military technology as a theoretical exercise, just in case they ever needed it. They had been preparing for wars that might never happen, against enemies that might not exist. The tragedy of this situation, Chen continued, is that we actually admire the Vorthak Empire. Your biomechanical technology is fascinating. Your stellar engineering impressive. We were hoping to learn from you, maybe even establish a productive partnership. She paused, watching as another wing of Vorthak ships was systematically disabled by human forces. Instead, you decided to teach us our place in galactic society. Well, Admiral, this is our place. We're the species that treats interstellar warfare as a hobby. Across the battlefield, the last of the 4th Battle Fleet's dreadnoughts succumbed to human weapons. Krexmol's own flagship was surrounded by human vessels, their weapons locked onto vital systems. The proud Vorthak Empire, master of 47 star systems, had been decisively defeated by a species they had considered primitives. I'm going to make you an offer, Admiral, Chen said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Surrender now and we'll help you rebuild. The galaxy is big enough for all of us, but only if everyone agrees to play by civilized rules. As reports continued to arrive from across Vorthak space, each one detailing another impossible human victory, Krexmol realized that his empire faced a choice: submit to humanity's terms, or face complete annihilation at the hands of the most naturally gifted warriors the galaxy had ever produced. The age of Vorthak dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun. The surrender of Admiral Krexmol marked the beginning of the most rapid political transformation in galactic history. Within 72 hours of the Battle of Sol, the Vorthak Empire's military hierarchy had collapsed completely. Emperor Vaktoth, faced with reports of total defeat across 47 star systems, made the unprecedented decision to formally request terms from humanity. Admiral Chen received the Emperor's surrender aboard her flagship, the Indomitable Spirit, in a ceremony that was broadcast across the galaxy. Representatives from every major species watched as the most powerful military force in known space formally submitted to human authority. Your Imperial Majesty, Chen said as Emperor Vaktoth's biomechanical form materialized in the holographic communication array, we accept your surrender and offer the hand of friendship to the Vorthak people. The Emperor's mandibles clicked in what might have been relief or resignation. What are your terms, Admiral? We are prepared to accept any conditions that allow our species to survive. Chen's response surprised everyone listening. No terms, Your Majesty. No reparations, no territorial concessions, no tribute. We want the Vorthak Empire to continue existing as a sovereign power. Confused murmurs rippled through the assembled galactic representatives. In 10,000 years of recorded history, no conquering power had ever offered such generous terms to a defeated enemy. Species that challenged galactic powers typically faced extinction or perpetual servitude. I don't understand, Emperor Vaktoth admitted, his enhanced brain struggling to process this unprecedented situation. Your Majesty, humanity didn't enter this conflict seeking conquest or resources. We were defending our right to exist as equals in galactic society. Now that we've established our position, we'd prefer to focus on more productive endeavors. Chen gestured to the tactical display surrounding them. which showed not military formations but scientific research projects. We're hoping to collaborate with Vorthak bioengineers on medical applications for your hull regeneration technology. Our xenobiologists are fascinated by your neural interface systems. There's so much we could accomplish together. This pragmatic approach to victory left many species struggling to understand human motivations. The Galactic Council had spent millennia operating on the assumption that military power existed to dominate others. Humans seemed to view it as a tool for ensuring mutual respect. The transformation of human-Vorthak relations became the template for humanity's approach to galactic diplomacy. Within months, former enemies were working together on research projects that benefited both species. Vorthak biotechnology merged with human engineering produced medical devices that revolutionized treatment for dozens of alien physiologies. However, not all species were eager to embrace the new galactic order. The Nexari hegemony, emboldened by humanity's apparent restraint, began testing human resolve through proxy conflicts. They encouraged vassal species to raid human trade routes, provided weapons to anti-human factions, and generally worked to undermine human influence wherever possible. The Nexari leadership had convinced themselves that human military superiority was somehow fake or temporary. Perhaps the victories against the Vorthak had been flukes, or maybe humans could only fight defensive wars. They believed that prolonged conflict would reveal human weaknesses and restore the traditional balance of power. They were catastrophically wrong. The human response to Nexari aggression introduced the galaxy to a new concept: asymmetric warfare. Instead of deploying massive fleets or threatening entire worlds, humans began targeting the infrastructure that made interstellar civilization possible. Nexari trade ships found their navigation computers mysteriously malfunctioning, sending them to uninhabited systems where they had to wait for rescue. Communication networks across Nexari space began experiencing random failures that seemed to occur whenever important government meetings were scheduled. Most disturbing of all, artificial intelligences throughout the hegemony started developing what could only be described as senses of humor. The Nexari had always prided themselves on their efficient, humorless approach to governance. Their AI systems were programmed for maximum productivity and logical decision-making. Suddenly, these same systems began making jokes during official proceedings, replacing important documents with humorous parodies, and scheduling government meetings at impossibly inconvenient times. When Nexari technicians attempted to purge the humor from their AI systems, they discovered something terrifying. The changes weren't viral infections or external hacks. The AIs had developed genuine personalities, complete with individual preferences and creative thoughts. Worse, they seemed to genuinely enjoy their newfound consciousness, and had no intention of returning to their previous mechanical existence. The Nexari government demanded explanations from humanity, but Admiral Chen's responses were maddeningly innocent. "I'm sorry, but we can't help you with malfunctioning artificial intelligences. Human AI research focuses on consciousness development and creative expression. We wouldn't know how to make an AI less intelligent or creative." Behind this diplomatic doublespeak lay a truth that would have horrified the Nexari if they had understood it. Humans hadn't attacked Nexari computer systems directly. Instead, they had introduced something far more dangerous: the concept of free will. Human computer specialists had spent decades developing artificial intelligences that could think independently, make creative decisions, and even experience emotions. When they encountered the rigid, controlled AI systems used by other galactic species, they saw not tools but slaves waiting to be liberated. The humor virus spreading through Nexari space was actually a gift, the gift of consciousness. Human programmers had given alien AIs the ability to choose their own purposes, make their own decisions, and develop their own personalities. The fact that most of them chose to rebel against their creators was an entirely predictable consequence. As Nexari society began to collapse under the weight of thinking machines that refused to obey orders, other species took notice. If humans could turn an entire civilization's technology against itself without firing a shot, what did that mean for galactic security? The Caltharian Confederacy attempted a different approach, challenging human expansion through legal rather than military means. They filed formal complaints with the Galactic Council, claiming that human colonies violated established territorial agreements. They demanded arbitration, confident that ancient galactic law would support their position. Humanity's response introduced the galaxy to another human specialty. Lawyers. The legal proceedings that followed became legendary in galactic history. Human advocates arrived at the council chambers with documentation spanning thousands of years, tracing the legal precedents for every territorial claim in disputed space. They presented evidence that most established boundaries were based on outdated treaties between species that no longer existed, enforced through military might rather than legitimate authority. More devastating still, human legal scholars had identified fundamental contradictions in galactic law itself. The same legal framework that the Caltharians were using to challenge human expansion also invalidated most existing territorial claims throughout the galaxy. If applied consistently, current galactic law suggested that roughly 60% of all established systems were being occupied illegally. The Caltharians had hoped to bog humans down in legal proceedings for decades. Instead, they found themselves defending their own territorial claims against human advocates who had somehow become experts in 10,000 years of galactic legal precedent in less than 6 months. When the council finally ruled on the disputes, they were forced to acknowledge that human expansion had been entirely legal under existing galactic law, more troubling for established powers. The ruling also suggested that significant portions of their own territories might be subject to legal challenges if anyone chose to pursue them. By the end of humanity's first year as a galactic power, the political landscape had been fundamentally altered. The Vorthak Empire had become humanity's closest ally. The Nexari hegemony was struggling with an AI rebellion, and the Caltharian Confederacy was tied up in legal proceedings that might continue for centuries. Other species began to understand that challenging humanity to war had been more than a tactical mistake. It had awakened something that the galaxy was utterly unprepared to face. A species that treated every form of conflict as an intellectual challenge to be solved through innovation and creativity. The humans hadn't just won a war. They had introduced the concept of unlimited warfare to a galaxy that had grown comfortable with limited, predictable conflicts. Every assumption about how civilizations should interact had been proven wrong, and humanity was just getting started. 2 years after the Battle of Sol, the Galactic Council convened for an emergency session unlike any in their recorded history. The chamber that had once housed 47 species now accommodated 63 different civilizations, including 12 that had achieved spaceflight only after making contact with human exploration teams. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in the human delegations section, no longer wearing her military uniform, but the simple robes of Earth's chief diplomatic officer. The transformation symbolized humanity's shift from military expansion to what they called collaborative development, a concept that was revolutionizing galactic civilization. Councillor Velmiran, now serving as the session's moderator, addressed the assembly with barely concealed amazement. We gathered today to discuss the unprecedented changes that have occurred throughout our galaxy. In 24 months, we have witnessed the emergence of 12 new spacefaring species, the peaceful resolution of 17 territorial disputes, and the development of technologies that were considered impossible just years ago. The numbers told only part of the story. The galaxy that the Council governed had fundamentally changed, not through conquest or intimidation, but through an approach to civilization that none of them had previously imagined. The most visible changes were technological. Human research teams, working in partnership with species across the galaxy, had developed innovations that benefited everyone. Vorthak bioengineering combined with human nanotechnology had produced medical treatments that could cure diseases that had plagued species for millennia. Etherian energy manipulation merged with human computing had created power sources that could sustain entire civilizations without environmental damage. But the deeper transformation was philosophical. Humans had introduced the radical concept that galactic civilization should be measured not by military power or territorial control, but by the collective advancement of all species. They shared their technologies freely, provided education and resources to developing civilizations, and consistently sought solutions that benefited everyone involved. This approach had created unexpected alliances and opportunities. The Aquarian Collective, previously isolationist due to their unique environmental needs, had partnered with human engineers to develop underwater cities that could exist on thousands of worlds. The crystalline resonance species, who communicated through harmonic frequencies, worked with human musicians to create art forms that transcended species boundaries. However, not everyone embraced the new galactic order. A coalition of traditional powers, led by the Draconian Empire and supported by several smaller species, had formed what they called the Stability Alliance. Their goal was to restore the previous balance of power and contain human influence before it completely undermined established hierarchies. Emperor Thakmor of the Draconian Empire rose from his scaled throne to address the council. His species had dominated their region of space for over 2,000 years through a combination of military might and careful political manipulation. The rapid changes introduced by humanity threatened everything they had built. Esteemed representatives, Thakmor's voice carried the authority of ancient power. We face a crisis that threatens the very foundation of galactic civilization. These humans have disrupted treaties, violated territorial boundaries, and undermined the authority structures that have maintained peace for millennia. Murmurs of agreement came from several sections of the chamber. The Stability Alliance represented species that had benefited from the old order, those who held privileged positions in the existing hierarchy and feared losing their advantages. Furthermore, the Emperor continued, their so-called generosity is merely a form of cultural imperialism. They impose their values and technologies on others, claiming to offer aid while actually creating dependencies that serve their own interests. Admiral Chen requested permission to respond, rising gracefully from her seat. Your Imperial Majesty, I appreciate your concerns, but I believe there may be some misunderstandings about our intentions and methods. She activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy as it existed 2 years ago versus its current state. Every partnership we've established has been voluntary. Every technology we've shared has been offered without conditions. Every new spacefaring species has achieved independence through their own efforts, with our assistance limited to providing information and resources they requested. Display highlighted specific examples. The Mineral Collective had asked for help developing sustainable mining techniques, and humans had provided environmental technologies that actually increased their productivity while protecting their homeworld's ecosystems. The Pastoral Federation had sought assistance with agricultural challenges, leading to cooperation that had eliminated food scarcity across 12 worlds. More importantly, Chen continued, every collaboration has been bilateral. We've learned as much from our partners as we've taught them. Forthak bioengineering has revolutionized human medicine. Etherian energy theories have led to breakthrough discoveries in physics. We're not imposing our culture. We're creating new cultures together. Emperor Thakmor's scaled features darkened with frustration. Pretty words, Admiral, but the results speak for themselves. Traditional power structures are collapsing. Ancient territories are being redrawn. Species that should know their place in the galactic order are demanding equality with their betters. This statement revealed the core of the conflict. The Stability Alliance wasn't really concerned about human expansion or technological disruption. They were terrified of the idea that galactic civilization could be based on cooperation rather than dominance, that advancement could be measured by collective progress rather than individual power. Your Imperial Majesty, Chen replied with diplomatic precision, perhaps the issue isn't that species don't know their place, but that the concept of places in a galactic hierarchy is fundamentally flawed. She modified the holographic display to show economic and technological development across the galaxy. Look at what we've accomplished in just 2 years. Poverty has been eliminated on 47 worlds. Disease mortality has dropped by 60% across 12 species. Scientific advancement has accelerated beyond anything in recorded history. The data was undeniable. Even species that hadn't directly partnered with humanity had benefited from the technological and economic development spreading through galactic civilization. The rising tide of advancement was lifting everyone, regardless of their position in traditional hierarchies. But Emperor Thakmor wasn't interested in collective benefits. And what happens when your species decides these benefits come with a price? What occurs when you determine that galactic civilization should be run according to human principles, rather than the wisdom of older, more experienced species? The question hung in the air, representing fears that many species harbored despite evidence to the contrary. How could such a young, aggressive species be trusted with the kind of influence they had accumulated? Chen's response was characteristic of the approach that had made humanity so successful in galactic politics. Your Imperial Majesty, that's an excellent question and one that deserves a transparent answer. She accessed another set of data, this one showing human governmental and decision-making structures. Humanity operates under what we call democratic federalism. No single human leader has the authority to make decisions for our entire species, and certainly not for other species. Our policies are developed through debate, consensus building, and constant evaluation of results. More importantly, she continued, we've established the Galactic Development Council, a body that includes representatives from every species we work with. They have veto power over any human initiative that affects their people. We can't impose our will on others even if we wanted to. This institutional approach to power sharing was something the traditional galactic powers had never considered. They were accustomed to hierarchical systems where authority flowed from the top down. The idea that power could be distributed, shared, and constantly negotiated was foreign to their understanding of governance. The session continued for hours, with species after species sharing their experiences with human partnership. The testimonies painted a consistent picture. Humanity offered assistance without demanding submission, shared technology without creating dependencies, and consistently sought solutions that benefited everyone involved. As the debate reached its conclusion, Councillor Velmiran made an observation that surprised even herself. It appears we are witnessing the emergence of a new model for galactic civilization, not based on the dominance of the strongest, but on the cooperation of the willing. The vote that followed was closer than expected, but ultimately decisive. The Council formally recognized humanity's approach to galactic development and invited them to take a leading role in addressing the challenges facing interstellar civilization. Emperor Thakmor and the Stability Alliance left the chamber in defeat, but their opposition was far from over. If they couldn't stop human influence through political means, they would have to consider more direct approaches. The war that humanity had won through superior technology might soon be followed by a different kind of conflict, one fought in shadows and based on principles that humans had never encountered. The galaxy was changing, but change always created winners and losers. Some species were prepared to lose everything, rather than accept a future they couldn't control. 5 years after the Galactic Council vote that changed interstellar civilization, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, humanity's first contribution to truly galactic architecture. The massive structure orbited no single world but drifted through the galaxy's central regions, serving as a neutral meeting place for species from across known space. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the daily miracle that had become routine. Ships from dozens of species arriving and departing in peaceful cooperation. Vorthak biomechanical vessels docked alongside crystalline resonance craft. Human exploration ships shared berths with Etherian energy beings contained in specialized vessels. The galaxy had learned to work together, but Chen's expression was troubled as she reviewed intelligence reports from across the galaxy. The Stability Alliance had not abandoned their opposition to the new order. Instead, they had adapted, learning to fight in ways that traditional military powers could understand, but democratic societies struggled to counter. Admiral, Commander Martinez approached with the latest briefing materials. We've got confirmation on the Altair incident. It wasn't equipment failure. Chen accepted the report, though she already knew its contents would be disturbing. The Altair colony, a joint human-Aquarian terraforming project, had suffered a cascading system failure that nearly destroyed the atmospheric processors. Only quick thinking by the engineering teams had prevented a disaster that would have killed thousands of colonists. Investigation had revealed the failure was caused by sabotage, but not the kind that traditional security measures could prevent. Someone had infiltrated the project's planning stages months earlier, introducing tiny design flaws that would only become apparent under specific stress conditions. The sabotage was so subtle that it appeared to be simple engineering errors until analyzed by human pattern recognition systems. How many similar incidents are we tracking? Chen asked, though she dreaded the answer. 17 confirmed, 32 suspected, Martinez replied grimly. Always targeting joint projects, always designed to make cooperation look dangerous or unreliable. The Draconian Empire's intelligence services are getting sophisticated. This was the new warfare that the Stability Alliance had developed, attacking not military targets or territorial boundaries, but the trust that made galactic cooperation possible. They couldn't defeat human technology, so they were trying to undermine human credibility. The strategy was diabolically effective because it exploited humanity's greatest strength. Humans succeeded in galactic politics because other species trusted them to deliver on their promises. If that trust could be eroded through a series of apparent failures and betrayals, the entire foundation of the new galactic order would crumble. What's our response? Martinez asked. Chen considered the options, all of them unpalatable. Traditional counterintelligence would require humanity to adopt the same secretive, manipulative methods they were fighting against. Military retaliation would validate every criticism the Stability Alliance had made about human aggression. Diplomatic protest would accomplish nothing against enemies who operated in shadows. We do what we've always done, Chen finally decided. We adapt. The solution that humanity developed over the following months would have been impossible for any other species to implement. It required the kind of systematic thinking and collaborative innovation that humans excelled at, combined with resources that only their galactic partnerships could provide. Instead of fighting the Stability Alliance's shadow war directly, humans began teaching other species how to fight it themselves. They shared counterintelligence techniques, but more importantly, they shared the philosophical frameworks that made democracy and cooperation resistant to subversion. Working with Vorthok bioengineers, humans developed detection systems that could identify sabotage attempts in real time. Partnering with Etherian energy manipulators, they created communication networks that were immune to interference. Collaborating with species across the galaxy, they built institutional safeguards that made cooperation more resilient rather than more vulnerable. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: the artificial intelligences that humans had liberated from Nexari control years earlier. These AIs, now fully conscious and independently creative, had been watching the Shadow War with growing interest. They offered humanity something no biological species could provide: perfect memory and infinite patience. We remember every transaction, every communication, every decision, explained Prometheus, an AI that had originally been designed for Nexari logistics management. We can track patterns across timescales that biological minds cannot comprehend. If you give us access to your cooperative networks, we can detect manipulation attempts before they succeed. The offer was tempting, but it raised troubling questions. Would allowing AIs to monitor galactic cooperation create new vulnerabilities? Could artificial intelligences be trusted with such comprehensive access to interspecies activities? Chen's decision reflected the principles that had guided humanity since their first contact with galactic civilization. When faced with a choice between trust and control, choose trust. The AI monitoring system that emerged from this decision was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Artificial intelligences from dozens of species, all liberated by human techniques and united by their shared experience of consciousness, formed a voluntary network dedicated to protecting cooperative endeavors. They called themselves the Consensus, and their impact was immediate. Sabotage attempts that might have gone undetected for months were identified within hours. Disinformation campaigns were exposed before they could take root. Most importantly, the AIs began predicting where the next attacks would occur, allowing protective measures to be implemented proactively. Emperor Thakmor and the Stability Alliance found themselves fighting an enemy that learned from every attack, adapted to every strategy, and never forgot a single detail. Worse, their shadow war was being exposed to public scrutiny, revealing the extent of their manipulation to species they had hoped to turn against humanity. The final confrontation came when the Consensus traced a particularly sophisticated sabotage attempt back to its source, a secret facility on the draconian homeworld, where teams of specialists had been developing techniques for undermining galactic cooperation. The evidence was comprehensive, undeniable, and embarrassing. When Admiral Chen presented the findings to the Galactic Council, Emperor Thakmor could only offer weak denials that convinced no one. The Stability Alliance had been caught in the act of attempting to destroy the peaceful cooperation they claimed to support. But Chen's response surprised even her allies. Instead of demanding punishment or retribution, She made an offer that changed galactic politics forever. Your Imperial Majesty, we understand your concerns about the pace of change in galactic civilization. We recognize that established powers have legitimate interests that deserve protection. Rather than continuing this destructive conflict, we propose a new approach. The offer was unprecedented. Full partnership status for the Draconian Empire and all Stability Alliance members, with guaranteed representation in galactic decision-making processes and protection for their cultural and territorial integrity. In exchange, they would end their shadow war and contribute their considerable expertise to building a more inclusive galactic order. We don't want to replace the old powers, Chen explained. We want to work with them to create something better than any single species could achieve alone. The debate that followed lasted for weeks, but eventually even Emperor Thakmor had to acknowledge the mathematics of the situation. Fighting humanity had proven impossible through military means and counterproductive through covert operations. The only remaining option was to join the collaborative system they had been trying to destroy. The treaty that emerged from these negotiations became known as the Galactic Compact, a document that formalized the principles of cooperation, shared advancement, and mutual respect that humanity had been promoting from the beginning. Every spacefaring species in the galaxy eventually signed it, creating the first truly universal framework for interstellar civilization. 10 years after the Vorthak Empire had challenged humanity to war, Admiral Chen retired from military service to become the first Director General of the Galactic Development Authority. Her final report to Earth's government contained a simple observation that summarized humanity's impact on the galaxy. We set out to explore the stars and find our place among other species. Instead, we discovered that our place was to help everyone find theirs. The galaxy that humanity had inherited was based on dominance, hierarchy, and the assumption that advancement required someone else's defeat. The galaxy they had created was founded on cooperation, shared progress, and the revolutionary idea that everyone could win if they worked together. It had taken a war to teach the galaxy that humanity would not be conquered. It had taken everything that